Welcome back, my wisdom walkers. And for those of you that are new to my channel, Life Lessons Learned, I welcome you as well. I'm hoping that you will enjoy this video and come back and visit me soon. Now, maybe enjoy is not the right word for this particular video. It is going to have somewhat disturbing information for some of you out there, so I wanted to give that warning up front. And I'm going to talk about the position that I held at a company one time where I faced death more than three times, but I'm going to talk about the three major times when I did. And this is not like I was a police officer or fire person, because I can't say fireman, fire lady, fire woman. Those types of jobs, you, of course, plan on not getting harmed or killed, but there is the high possibility or probability that that could happen. With this one, I there were some instances where we knew there could be danger, but if you're following the rules and regulations as we all should be doing, those things should be minimized. So I'm going to talk about the first two, which were really very simple, or as simple as that can be, incidental times where I just kind of happened to be in the right place, but at the wrong time. I say the right place because I was supposed to be at work, okay? But with the events that occurred, sometimes you're in it's just not the right time to be in that particular position that you're in. So in this case, I worked at a plant. This is when I worked at a steel plant. And this was actually one of it was a new plant. It was very innovative. And it was one that was, really, well, I shouldn't say, but you know how most plants back in the day were rife with accidents. They were dark, they were greasy floors, nooks and crannies where people could easily have accidents at. This plant was totally opposite from that. Okay, so it was a bright, clean, innovative plant that we worked at. It was we dealt with brand new steel products, so we didn't have things that were necessarily oily or greedy or grimy or anything like that. Well, in this first instance, the way that my line worked, and this, of course, we're dealing with sharp, razor sharp steel in some parts, and it's moving pretty fast because, you're in the steel plant, and the thing is to get the steel as it comes down, grab it and place it in a crate or a box or whatever the case may be in. Well, this particular night, I was at the front of the line. So the way it worked is it would be four people on one side of this ramp and four people on the other side. So you have four people here and four people here. The ramp would be in the middle, and the steel would come flying at so many seconds, so many per second. So the four people on this side were to catch the first one that would come down, and the four people on that side would catch the next one. So that way it was like this. We're all, taking turns catching the steel and sliding it down. Well, at one point, the I had, bought my piece and was sliding it down to my colleagues on my side. But the person that was supposed to catch the next one on this side, I don't know what they were doing, talking to someone, or they had turned their head. For some reason, they were distracted. And it wasn't, I'm waiting for, I'm thinking they're going to catch theirs. And so I didn't reach out, because if you reach out and they're reaching out, you can mess up the whole line. The line will have to be stopped and that kind of thing. So I didn't even, it didn't occur to me that that person was distracted. And so that long piece of steel, and this particular steel was shaped like a triangle. So that pointed part would come flying down first, and we're supposed to put our hands flat on it. Okay. Well, that pointed part was coming at whatever speed they come down, and it was coming racing right towards me. And one of the guys saw that the person that was distracted wasn't going to be able to catch it in time. And just as it was about to pierce my heart, a different guy came and put both of his hands on it and stopped it. And he yelled, "Stop the line, stop the line." So that was a pretty harrowing experience for me. And of course, I was kind of, shaken. I was like, what the heck? Why weren't you, doing what you should be doing? And there are some jobs when you can be distracted and lives aren't in the balance, but there's others where you really need to be focused and be, on the job and be cognizant of what's going on. So of course they stopped the line and they asked if I needed to take a break. And then the guy that of course had stopped it, he was like, he didn't, he was like, he just moved from instinct, just to stop that. So of course I thanked him profusely. I was like, what the hell? And at this particular job, I was the one of the health and safety team leads. So, you have to do a report as to what happened and what occurred. So that way we can avoid that from happening again. But in this case, it was not a machine, um, you know, disorder or anything like that. It was simply someone that got distracted. So that was the one of the times. I won't say the first time because I didn't keep these things in order. Okay. The second time that something that would have been irreversible. Okay, so in this case, like there wouldn't, it would have been sudden death. I'll just say that. Maybe I should have said a warning first. But also in the plants, as you can imagine, we have big, huge, giant compressors that compress the steel. So it comes down really hard and compresses the steel. And every once in a while, there will be a quirk or a glitch with that machine. And again, remember, I'm on the health and safety team. And so it was my shift. And this machine had stopped for some reason. It wasn't, I shouldn't say it had stopped, but it was delivering steel that was bent. And so we have to stop the line to find out what if there's something in there that's causing it to bend. Because this is, like I said, razor sharp steel, but some of the steel was also razor thin. So if one little thing could make it be out of the requirements that we needed for that shift. So, we when you stop the line, you of course have to let everyone on that line know that the machine is going to be stopped there to step away. So that way we make sure there are no accidents. And we go in and see what's going on with it. So again, it was my shift. So the machine is stopped. I climb into the machine. Yeah, you already know where this is going, okay? My biggest tip is don't work with idiots, but hello. And so I'm, checking the nooks and crannies and seeing if there's something stuck in there that's causing this piece of steel to be bent at this one particular spot. Because, you know by the shape of the machine which nooks and crannies to look in. Well, you know how sometimes managers or supervisors, they don't want a line to stop for anything because when the line stops, that means money is not, being made. So it disrupts the profit thing. And so this manager came on the floor to ask why the machine was stopped. And before anyone can answer, he's reaching to start the doggone button without even getting an answer as to why we were stopped. I don't know. Did he think we were just about to go on the picnic and just not work for the night? But as he was about to do that, one of my colleagues actually rushed over and almost tackled him because he had to stop his hand from pushing that button to start the machine back up. Because as you can imagine, it would have clamped down on me, and that would have been the end of all. Okay, and so for that one, oh my God, everyone was hollering and rushing to him and screaming and everything. And then, of course, just to be honest, he was all shaken up as well because he was like, "You guys should have said she was in there." They were like, "You didn't give us a chance to answer. You just started reaching for the button." So, needless to say, that one was a major report that needed to be done because they did change some rules and guidelines so that when managers or supervisors are coming onto the floor, rather than just heading to a machine to start it back up, there's a person that they have to speak to first to find out what's going on and why there's a delay and that kind of thing, not just coming on, taking control and rushing to push buttons. So that one was really an eye opener for me because if you work with one idiot, you probably are working with more than one. And my thing was, okay, I probably need to reassess where I'm working at, and because you can't do anything about other people that's not using their brains, okay? But you can do something that whether you can do something in the form of deciding whether you're going to stay in such a place or if you're going to, switch to a different department or maybe work in accounting where the worst mistake is numbers. But that was that one. And at this time, I had my girls were like 4, 6, and 8, so I had really young girls, and I was like, I think I might need to rethink my career path at this point. But the next one I'm going to talk about had nothing to do with machinery. It did not have anything to do with anyone being distracted. It had to do with my own idiotic reaction to what was going on at the plant. And I made a decision in a split second to do something that was foolish, irresponsible, and death defying. Okay, so I'm just going to say that. Now, at this time at the plant, um, there were some issues going on with them coming in thinking about getting what's the word for all of this? When they're looking at getting a union into the plant, because remember this was a new plant, it was innovative, it wasn't like other plants, so they didn't expect and they paid really well, very well, and they had good benefits. I mean, it's a plant, a steel plant, and they felt that their employees were, when I say they, the company felt that their employees would have no reason to, even want to join the union. And a union really isn't just about, better pay and all of that. It's about safety and health and other things that should be adhered to, for the employees. But you know how contentious that always is. And if you don't know, I mean, the story of Jimmy Hoffa would probably explain it better. But you're going to have people that are for it and some people who are against it, and they have their reasons, their pros and cons and everything. And I get that. And this had wound up splitting, or I should say, dividing this, you know, all of us. I mean, it somehow, and when I say dividing, I mean a major divide. It divided the young against the old, males against females, black against white. It was just something I had never seen before. I remember I'm a POP, a perpetually optimistic person. So I'm trying to see both sides to all the issues. And of course, well, you wouldn't know if you haven't watched it in my previous videos, but I've been trained in conflict resolution, peer mediation, all the things that make or assist people to come to the table together to communicate so that we can understand each other and then come up with solutions and things like that in an amicable way so that people don't feel like they've been taken advantage of or anything like that. Well, on this particular week, things have been leading up to getting worse and worse with everyone on the floor. It was just getting, I mean, people were calling each other names. Some people wanted to switch departments because they didn't agree with the person that was on their line. I mean, it was like, really? That's how we're going to handle this? So, one particular night when I made one of the most stupid decisions in my life, um, there was a guy that was working on the high lift, so it's the high low lift where you have the steel um, feet that come up and you can move pallets and things like that and move them over. And I was on the floor, so I was actually on the floor and he's in the high lift, and I was a team lead, and people they ask us sometimes advice on things, and a lot of times we try to um, circumvent conflict from, getting out of hand. Well, like I said, this week things had just kind of boiled over and everyone was at their wits' end. And I was coming down the middle of the floor plant, plant floor, and this guy was coming with the high low, and he recognized me as someone that wasn't in agreement with where he was. And so he had, he's in the high low, and he's like, "You better move off the floor, B, or I'll run you over." And like I said, I was at my wit's end with this whole thing. Okay, I'm thinking we can either all act like adults or we can all act like adults. But anyway, when he said that, I didn't know what to do. So I stood there in the middle of that plant floor with that him coming beaming down on me in that high low. And he said, "If you better move. If you think I'm playing, I'm not." And I said, "And if you think I'm bluffing, I'm not." And I did not move an inch. Not one, okay? People on both sides of the planet hollering, "Move, Sherry, just move." And other ones are like, "Man, man, what are you doing?" Saying to him, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "You'll see." And I stood my ground, although that means something different today, standing your ground. And he got like inches away from me, inches from me, and then he suddenly swerved. And he had to make such a sharp turn that he almost turned over that entire high lift, like it almost toppled on the floor. And then folks ran over to me and they were like, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? That was the most stupidest thing to do." And our supervisors and managers, they were like on the same floor that we were on, and everything in this plant, well, not everything, but most of the offices were all glass. So that way they can monitor and see what was going on. And one of the managers saw what I had done, and of course, that means he saw what this guy had done. Guess who gets called into the office? You guessed it, me. So the manager's like, "What in the world were you thinking of? And you're the captain of the health and safety team. I cannot believe you stood in the middle of that, floor like that while he's, coming down at you." And I said, and if any of you guys have watched any of my previous videos, you already know I don't take a bunch of anything from anyone, supervisors, managers, owners, CEOs. But I'm also not going to cause problems for anyone. So I'm thinking someone is trying to run me down in a high lift and I'm the one that gets called in the office. We got this wrong, okay? But so he was, and it was two of them. So it was a supervisor and one was the manager, and the manager was the one um, that had, witnessed all of this and called me into the office, and the supervisor had saw partial of it too, so he had seen some of it, and he said, "What in the world were you thinking of?" And I said, "Why am I getting called in the office? He should be the one called in the office, putting someone else's, life in danger like that and being, that angry that he would do that." And so this manager said, um, "I just don't agree with what you've done or why you've done it." And I said, "Well, he was on the floor, calling me bees." And then this manager said, this manager or the supervisor, I'm kind of getting together, okay, co-mingling them here. But the supervisor said to me, "And that is no reason for anyone to be charging at anyone. There's no reason for you to stand there while he's charging at you." So I said, "Well, I said, listen, B," and so I called him one. And as soon as I said that, he starts to charge at me. Like, what the hell? And the supervisor cut in to hold him back. And I said, "No, let him go." I said, "It's okay for me to be on the floor to be called bees and everything else. But as soon as someone calls him one, now he's ready to fight." I said, "Now you see how I feel out there on the floor." And his whole face just turned red because he was like, "Damn, yeah, I guess she told me, or her point has been proven." So at this time, that whole plant, I mean, they started shutting down some of the lines. They were saying that, we all needed some time to cool off and that they were going to have an emergency meeting with, the supervisors and the managers. And when they do that, we all get on one floor and we all, come from different areas and everything. So they kind of did that. And the manager and the supervisor asked me, because of course that was a threat on my life, asked me if I wanted to call the police or write up a report or do anything like that. And I know you guys probably, some of you would probably probably say, is she real that big of an idiot? But my thing was, I knew that, you're in a plant, it's hot, we're working with steel, tempers get flared. And I was like, no, I'm not looking to do any of that. I said, I just want people to know, what our rules and regulations are, and that no, it's not okay to threaten to run someone down with a high low. What the hell? So the way this whole thing, I want to say, ended or got resolved is I worked the midnight shift at this particular plant. And if you saw my previous video called Pete, the repeat offender, you'll see another incident that occurred with me at this particular workplace where I was asked if I wanted to call the cops. I don't know if these things just happen to me or what, but when we worked the midnight shift, sometimes some of us would go to a bar when we would get off work. And it was a bar that was a bar restaurant. So, they served food and things like that. And I don't think they could serve liquor because I think in Michigan it has to be a certain time or something like that. But anyway, some of us would go to the bar, and I had a few people, friends that were with me, and I was sitting at the bar, and it was like 2 nights after this whole incident had occurred, and people had stopped talking to each other and all that kind of crazy crap. And this guy walked in, and one of my friends saw him, and she said, "Oh, Sherry, so and so's here." And we'll just call him, I don't know what to call him. Um, I don't want to say Ralph. But anyway, she said he's here. And because we worked at a plant, we all had box cutters and things like that because we had to cut, stuff open, boxes, wrapping, all of that steel stuff. And she said, "Do you have your box cutter on you?" And I'm like, if you really think I'm about to get into a bar fight with a box cutter, you guys got me all wrong. I said, "Yes, I have it on me, but I'm not looking to do any of that." And then she looked and she said, "Sherry, he's coming. He's coming over here. He's coming right over here to us." She said, "I'm gonna sit right here. I'm gonna stand by you." And she said, "You should stand up." I said, "I'm not standing up. I'm not doing anything. I want to see what he has to say." And you guys will not believe the rest of this story. And remember, all of these experiences are true ones that happened to me in my life and with my life and around my life and on my life. But he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Sherry." And I go, "Hey, what's up?" And he said, "I want you to stand up." And my friend is like, "Don't stand up. Don't do it." And so I stood up and he said, "Can I hug you?" Now, at this time, I'm like, "Are you going to cut me in the back of the neck or something? What's going on?" But he's there. So I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'm so sorry about what happened." He said, "You have always been fair and tried to get resolve conflict with all of us all the time." He said, "And I can't believe that I did that with you." And he said, "Please forgive me." Just like that. And you guys, all of our colleagues that were in the bar at that time, they saw us hugging and they started clapping. And people that hadn't talked to each other for a while started sitting with each other at their tables. And it was as if we had decided that whatever we were going to be doing with that decision about the union or not having the union and all of that, people had decided that whatever their vote would be, that's what their votes would be. And they weren't going to let that tarnish the friendships that they had cultivated over the years with each other, which is really the way it should be. I'm thinking about the way these last actual folks went through this country and how it has divided and separated so many of us. But we have to learn to respect other people's reasons for why they do what they do and be okay with that. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go along with it, but understand that you have your opinion, they have theirs, you have your beliefs, they have theirs, you have your thoughts on the situation, and they have theirs. What I try to do whenever I'm making any type of decision, um, in any part of my life, is I research information and I find out for myself what's actually going on or what the true facts are or any information that would assist me to make a decision that I think would be beneficial for all involved. So, just to let you know that, as I said, after that, all of us were just like we had been before. We were able to have camaraderie. We began speaking with each other and smiling and, doing our tasks and looking out for each other and protecting each other on the floor. But I wanted to share that one because I never should have stood there like that while that high low rained down on me. I should have, thought rationally and said, okay, this isn't worth my life or my limbs or whatever. And I should have just, and this doesn't mean that you allow people to disrespect you or any of that. But really, when it comes down to it, would it have been worth it to stand there and say he didn't swerve? What, it just did not make sense. And so that taught me, well, quite a bit of lessons for my life. But sometimes we just have to say, do you want to be right or do you want to have peace? And in this case, do you want to, you know, have an ego? I'm going to stand here and see what you're going to do. Or do you want to really say, you know what, time out. We're both going about this the wrong way, but I can only do something about me that's going about this the wrong way. I can't control what they're doing, but I can control what I'm doing. And so, yeah, I do regret having made that decision. It turned out really well, and no one was hurt or harmed or any of that. And we all got out our words and opinions and thoughts of what we wanted to do. But in the long run, that simply was not a good decision. So I wanted to share that story with you and to let those of you out there who sometimes your tempers do flare, but we really do have to learn to reel ourselves in and just think, is, do I want to be peaceful in this? And if so, what steps do I need to take to make that happen? So this is Life Lessons Learned. You know my mantra, knowledge is in the knowing, but wisdom is in the doing. And the proof of any lesson or the learning of any lesson is, why do I always get that mixed up? It's my own words. The the proof of a lesson is the application of it. So as we're learning lessons in life, what are we doing to adapt those lessons into our lifestyle so that they benefit us and the people around us? So for my wisdom walkers, thank you for this long video that I've done, but I just wanted to get all of those three instances out. For the newbies, if you are so inclined, please subscribe and come back and visit with me. We're talking about life lessons learned. I do encourage all of you to share things that you've experienced in your past. Maybe they were mistakes, maybe they were errors unbeknownst to you. Maybe you learned something after the fact, but share that information with me. I do answer, respond to all my commenters, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks.